Dream Count is the work of a master writer. Like I can feel the technique just like bleeding through the page. I mean, it's Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Her craft shone a light on Nigeria's literary scene. And right after that, there was just like a flurry of activity and there's a flurry of like investment into the scene. So, hi, my name is Shama and welcome to the book replay. If this is your first time, I review books in depth where we talk about like the various elements of craft and what was done. And today we'll be doing the book replay for Dream Count by Chimamanda. This has been a long and hard-fought review, and I've had to like not listen to any other review so that I could focus on what I wanted to say about this book. Because like this book was written by Chimamanda, a lot of readers read this book, and the opinions have been varied. I mean, I dare say that Dream Count is the most read novel released this year, and I think it will continue to be so. So you hear the reviews of this book range from this book was difficult to read to so much was unnecessary to I felt things so deeply that I saw myself in this book. For this review, I'll try to look at the book through the premise I have worked out for it. When it comes to the book replay, we're all about the premise. That's where we start from so that we can keep things as objective as we can. Here is how our reviews go. So there's the first part, which is the preamble, which is where you are at now. This is where I get to talk about books and put myself in the mood. And then we head into like the short review for those of you that have curfew and need to leave early. And then there's the protracted long review where we dive deep into like the elements of fiction reflected in the novel before coming back up to conclude it and talk about like our feelings. And as the part where like the conclusion, that's where I state my own personal opinions. And then I always try to end with a flourish and maybe some announcements where I pretend that I know the next book I'm going to replay. Feel free to skip to anyone, but if you can handle my voice and my mannerisms, just ride on because I think I'm such a vibe. Let me give you guys a short review of Dream Count. In short, Dream Count follows the lives of 4 women, 3 friends who grew up together more or less, and one from a different village, different country entirely. We have Chiamaka, who is the nexus of this friend group. She's Zikora's friend. Zikora is the second woman. Chiamaka is also Omelogo's cousin, who is the third woman and the third person in this, de facto friend group. There's Kadia too, who is a woman from Guinea who was emancipated to the United States, and she works in Chiamaka's employ as a housekeeper. The novel focuses on each of their stories as they navigate latter youth, their 30s, the start of their 40s, describing to us their dreams, goals, and their navigation of identity, and how they interact with the world and how they tackle the challenges thrown at them as women. Each of them managed to define a specific kind of journey that women can undertake when they start to live their lives on their own terms or as they figure things out outside like the confines of what women have always been asked to figure things out in. And as the story follows each one of them on this trip, we'll see callbacks to their youth, how the choices they make were affected by the situations they found themselves in earlier in their lives. We have Chiamaka, who is looking to be truly known, and this can be likened to a matter of self-identity because, coming from a background where everything is good, loving, and supportive, she was always sweet, unaffected by the vicissitudes of life, and has never had to harden her identity into something that needs to fight core life-changing challenges. So at the beginning of her adulthood, we find out that a strong sense of self and drifting, just fucking around and finding out because, she has this space to do so. Zikora had always known what she wanted to be and set out vis-a-vis, when her father married like a second wife. It created this kind of deep insecurity where she now wanted to have a home that wasn't broken with a man that she loved. And this colors her life, colors like her relationships, colors the kind of lovers that she has. And we see how she tries to make whole and put some color on things that were actually never going to be more than broken in the first place. We also explore a side of the relationships between mothers and daughters and the insecurity that steeps at the bottom of a woman's heart as a result. Now, Omelogo is the friend that, gets everything that she wants and keeps everything that she doesn't want away from her. But despite building what's a perfect life and anyone will be proud of, she still looks like she's not enough, and there's like some deep unhappinesses inside her that she still hasn't confronted. Undeterred though, she continues to improve herself, improve society, but she also discovers the limits to how much she can be without, sort of like tackling that thing inside her. It's a story. And then Kadiatu follows the journey of a woman from a village in Guinea, how she picks herself up from the mining village, gets into the US with her daughter, does everything right to not return to where she's from. But despite the fact that, she's a woman just doing her own thing, not trying to get into anybody's way, trouble can't find her for where she did. The story is narrated from, the pandemic times where everybody is deeply reflective, and so we have like this deep stream of consciousness that is non-chronological. As we walk through, their memory, we follow threads, start back and go to places, start from those places, move to different places, just how the map of thoughts moves. We get a lot of their personal perspectives and the flavor of how they see these things. So Chimamanda is able to take us to like deep levels of interpersonal thought and personal perspective, sink us into the most subjective of views, where the objectivity of the situation just brightens in contrast, because we are like, excuse me ma, we know that's what you said what happened, but that's not what happened. There are like some beautiful times in this novel. At its worst, Dream Cult rails against society in this jarring way that jolts you out of the hypnosis and makes you ask, excuse me, Chimamanda, like, who annoyed you today? Is everything all right at home? Is there rice? Now, Dream Count is voluminous, I would say, for, the kind of content that it puts so many words to say what she wants to say, but then she's able to keep the spirit of the novel and achieve what she wants to achieve, which I believe is like to demonstrate to us the shape of the lives of modern women, the kind of challenges they face in society, from the smallest of inconveniences to something very global. And she's able to like show us the minds and thought processes of these women. At times, the novel is trying to explain to us what a woman is. Sometimes it's just asking questions that seek self-identity and seek to position like women where they are. And other times it's just dead set on destroying the patriarchal ways of thinking. And some other times it's just writing, just writing. But ultimately what this book is, I would say, is like it's a collection of the dreams of women. And it is marvelous that Chimamanda is able to collect so much inside this novel while equipped with only experiences of women similar to herself, because these are specific experiences that a middle-aged Igbo woman from Nigeria can relate with. However, at the core of these experiences is something that every woman can feel and understand, including men. Everyone should read this book, man, woman, boy, child, because here you have the dreams of women counted, and I think that it's good and essential reading. The prose sparks to life because, of course, it's CNA. I don't think there's anybody that is going to do it like she's doing it in that her own unique way. Dream Count doesn't just ask questions, it also tries to provide answers. As for whether those answers are correct, you have to read for that and judge for yourself. What it also tells me is that after all is said and done, no matter the journeys, the achievements, the failures and disappointments, a woman is still a woman. She's not less of herself as society would deem her to be and try to like pile on those failures and try to like detract from who she is. Like a woman can also continue to dream as long as she lives, because life, possibility and potentiality doesn't end for women at any age. So, thank you Dream Count for stating that, even though I think it should be obvious. And yeah, so that will be the end of the short replay for this book. If you have coffee, you can go. Writers, literary enthusiasts, you guys know that we're going to be here for, a few more minutes. Let's lock in. So much has been said about separating the arts from the artist. And never have I had to have a deep interrogation of that idea than I did with Dream Count. Because the question somebody asked me for this review was, so if it was not Chimamanda that wrote this book, would you still think it was good? Dream Count first is shaped only in a way that Chimamanda can shape a book. Because when you factor in the style, the narrative and the depth of thought in it, it may not be the best, but it's her signature writing. The reason why this book only seems to flatten out is also because, there's the Chimamanda that writes, and then there's now the Chimamanda that, tends to flatten things out. So it is impossible to separate Dream Count from the life and times of Chimamanda. But if you were just zoning on the premise of the work, I think things will start to clear up. Who is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie? So yeah, she's one of Nigeria's most famed authors. So talented that right from her debut novel, we all knew that she was going to be a generational talent, or that she was a generational talent. She authored Purple Hibiscus, a literary work so critically acclaimed, so relevant that it became educational reading in schools, so eternal that to this day, people argue that it's her best work. Her second novel, Half of a Yellow Sun also enjoyed much attention, adapted into a movie. It sparked so many exhaustive discussions that like 5 years, 6 years, 7 years after, we were still discussing Half of a Yellow Sun. Her third novel, Americana, which sadly I have not read, did not enjoy as much attention because I think that it was a little bit ahead of its time because it was right at the lip of the feminist movement in Africa. She also authored a short story collection, The Thing Around Your Neck. There is Je Ijewale, and there are several short stories and essays that she has written. Now, being a public figure, she has been in the middle of controversies, and she has often been positioned as the spear tip of the feminist movement, for African women. Of course, being a Nigerian woman with a voice and all, this is something that she has never shied away from. Because one thing with Chimamanda is that, yes, so she'll be saying her thing. You are not going to make her shut up. That is one thing. She's going to talk even when she doesn't really know what's going on. And if you have a voice, use it by all means, please. So her work has always focused on telling stories that she knows. You're looking at like things like the Igbo struggle in Nigeria, the internal lives of women breaking free in a society that wants to change them. And she has often interrogated these topics, taking it down to the deep levels that she can write from. Now, all of her ideas about things sound not exactly, but again, who is 100% right all of the time? Per her position, though, people have often called out to be more astute. She can be very out of touch with some of the discussions that she tries to partake in. Now, Dream Count comes 10 years after her last novel, and in that period, I did not expect to read the same Chimamanda from those days. This is a Chimamanda that is less hungry, that is a brand. I told my book buddies that the best way to approach Dream Count is to approach it as a debut novel. This is a writer that is far removed from our society. The world that she used to be in is not that world. She kind of like has to find a new level. And in truth, Dream Count really does read like a debut novel in the sense that some of the ideas executed did not feel cooked through. And one has to do like a little bit of mental gymnastics, a little bit of work to get to its core. Or sometimes the idea was just laid out there without any of the nuance that we are used to Chimamanda laying out in her work. Book seems to want more for quality. But one of the things is that despite all of these shortcomings of Dream Count, it carries its ethos through. For book cover, this particular cover, I give it a 3/5. Sure, like this deep matte gray finish and the sparkling silver impressions that they are pretty neat. Like with this book on a shelf, amidst all of the color, it's sort of like a black hole that can hold your attention because you are looking at yellow, red, colorful books, and then it's just this black thing that is there. It is going to like actually seize you. It stands out, and from a distance, these silver prints are going to glisten all over the light. However, it still doesn't make it a great cover. I think that they could have worked harder, and whenever I look at this cover, I just get the sense that they just wanted to rush this thing. On into the narrative, Dream Count is told in 5 parts. So we start from Chiamaka's story. That's Chiamaka. She tells it in a first-person narrative. We pull back to watch Zikora go through her traumas. We witness the episodic horrors that Kadiatu is subjected to. We dive deep into Omelogo's sure-footed delivery. Then Chiamaka comes full circle there, completing the Dream Count. Beside these parts, like I said before, the stories are not chronological. We are taken from event to event, not randomly, but in a stream of consciousness way. This story is narrated according to how the characters access their memory and deal with like the events they remember. So we are going from event cluster to event cluster to event cluster. So when dealing with one event, we deal with the memories and traumas surrounding that event, and it helps us understand why our character is reacting or is formed this particular way. We are deep inside their mind. We are treated to what these experiences were like down to detail, and how like they process these things during the experience and after the experience. Chiamaka and Omelego are perhaps like two of the characters that are most like Chimamanda. I guess that's why they're written in first person. I would liken Chiamaka to like early Chimamanda, like very, very creative, lost at sea, seeking a theta. And then Omelogo is her dark side. I find that both of these characters actually would fit well with like the Chimamanda that I know in public. Not these characters are sort of like zones of her. Now the others felt like mere imaginations, when juxtaposed against these two, when you contrast them. Zikora's story is short and is not much explored, so it feels a little flat. Kadiatu's story at its worst feels like a stereotype that was extended for a long time. And then there is that author's note that talks extensively on why she wrote Kadiatu. And between you and I think that it's dripping with a little bit of guilt. I just looked at the final work and said, it's like you need to balance this thing out because it looks somehow. There's an idea I agree with that states that Kadiatu's story was not needed, that it feels stacked on, and it's sort of like ultimately destructive to Nafissatou Diallo. That's a thought that we'll deal with in the latter part. So let's talk about the premise and head into the review. I managed to hazard the premise from, the things inside this book. And Dream Count at first glance seems to have like a lot of premises. It just seems to be like, 4 different characters, each one having their own personal gripe and just moving. However, we can coalesce a single premise, which is that at any point in her life, a woman must not forget to dream. Dreaming is one of the greatest strengths a woman possesses in these times, just dreaming of something better, because stuff is bleak right now, especially in an age that is only just waking up to the facts that she has been oppressed for millennia. Now, this premise is strongly embedded in Chiamaka, the ultimate dreamer who continues to try hard at falling in love. See Zikora's dreams shatter, but with new information, Zikora is able to find like a new level where all hope is not lost. And so is Kadia too. She's able to find a new dream. Emologo, who is mean and everything, still understands that death happens when you stop dreaming, when you just, stop taking it one day at a time. Like, basically, nothing should be able to stand in the way of your ability to dream, especially as an African woman. I think this premise unites everybody's story here. I also find another idea in this book, which is also like the premise, is that whatever states or whatever she has gone through, a woman is never less of herself. Like, each woman is a force to reckon with. And we see how the wider society, everything that they've gone through, the wider society sees them as less, as undeserving, and how it is nearly almost, impossible to internalize these ideas, because even though your life, your bank account, your trophy cabinet, your soft clear skin, they are saying that, oh my God, I am the best thing since sliced bread. The way society will just be telling you things, it's hard to not internalize these things. And that is where, like, unparalleled dreaming comes in. To be a modern woman, to free oneself from like society's shackles, is to find new solutions to the new ways you drown, because people always try to push you down. This story takes place like across different places. You have like the US in Maryland, Chiamaka's house. You have Guinea in that village, the mining village. You have Nigeria, and then several cities in Europe and South America. As Chiamaka is a traveled writer, we are treated to the sweet places that she has been in, and we try to capture the magic of these places through her eyes at whatever quality. One that writes about places as like physical things, writes about like the kind of vibe that you get in those places. I wanted to fight Tasha when I was reading about Abuja, because she was writing like somebody that they told about Abuja. The writing voice that is very conscious, is introspective, can be emotional, it's powerful. One thing the voice in this story is that it is never weak, because the voice doesn't necessarily change to accommodate like different speeds of thought though. Rather, it relies on the content he's talking about and his approach to the events to differentiate like the quality of the voices. Now, the tone obviously differs from character to character, again, not in the physical arrangement, not in the vocabulary or the shape of the flow, but just in the content and how like the same particular topic is handled. The dialogue is not too special. I think it could be better. There's so much of that the off dialogue writing is doing that half the time I just want to leave the dialogue and just get back to the narration, because you'll not be hard pressed to find the dialogue in this story just meandering into something about society. Just say that inside this world, these people are just like really stressed by things that are happening. Now, the use of language is obviously sublime, because the way she describes things. This is good reading, not compact by any stretch of the imagination. Thank you for this text. Moving on to the characters. Dream Count is very much about his characters, so much that it is shaped according to their experiences, and it moves the way will move inside their head. Now, to keep this review short, I am going to just merge the characters with the themes that they explore, and because each character at times read as if they're just like a particular theme that Chimamanda chose to fatten up. We'll start with Chiamaka, number 1. I think she is the most well-written character here. She reads like the author enjoyed exploring where like the woman was going. So much time and detail and well-roundedness was given to like each scenario. And to be honest, how can you not enjoy writing about Chiamaka? She's a sweet girl, from like a very well-to-do household. There was not like a lot of trauma, or like she was shielded from like a lot of like the difficulties that you normally experience as a Nigerian. had everything that she could need and did not face any like serious problems from childhood. So of course, like I said before, she didn't need to like toughen up or like discover a new self to manage her life and navigate like these rough patches of life. In fact, she's allowed time to discover herself, to start and stop things. She even gets a house of her own where she's like safe enough to like explore. She even gets a housekeeper. Like in the United States, or not anywhere, in Maryland or in a place that has trees that is just secluded, where like she's sort of like away from like the craziness of the cities. And like every Nepo baby who doesn't want to waste away, she just starts doing anything. She starts writing because she's creative, and thank God that she's actually creative. Failed novel and a few other things are in her week before she starts travel writing. And that kind of fits like the place that she is in her life. She is at that point where she starts writing. She's not tethered to herself. She's not truly known to anyone, even to herself. And that's why her story starts with the idea that she yearns to be truly known and loved lavishly and stuff. So I would describe Chiamaka's psychology as this: like her being the apple of everyone's eye, has always been looked at the way anyone would look at a good thing. Sort of like stops her from not really seeing like who she really is. She's sweet, she's soft, she's pretty. She really hasn't touched the consequences of like her actions, because there's always like this padding show. She hasn't really felt the full brunt of how like the world can be wicked to her, and that is why she falls into the arms of somebody like Daniel, who is more glitter than substance and full of self-loathing. Like the audacity of that guy, like even Obama is shocked, and he wrote The Audacity of Hope. Chiamaka's goal, I think I stated at the beginning of her story, was to like find somebody who could truly understand her, vibe with her and move according to her beats. To be honest, I was very critical of her, because when it comes to like self-identity, you cannot discover yourself by exploring outside. That's by like extrospection. It is through introspection as well as extrospection that you start to find what is unique about the combination of who you are. It's easier to introspect when you're in a quiet place and you can hear like the still small voice in your head. So yeah, like stay by yourself for once. Chiamaka did not seem to have heard these voices, and until Kadiatu and the pandemic did she really have the silence to take a long look at herself and start deconstructing these experiences. And that is where we get the narration from. What I saw was how an absence of personal identity can lead one to just wander, and that's kind of like a trip, and how it can just lead you into the softest of places, how you can be taken advantage of, and how sometimes you don't just see what is really good for you at the time when it is there, vis-a-vis her time with Chuka. At the end, when she says that that's one thing that she will regret, I'm like, yeah, at this point now you regret it, but at that time Chuka wasn't the person for you. Amaka says that she wants to be loved lavishly. I laughed a little because, well, there's some internal work that you have to do before you can start saying these things, because if you don't find yourself, even the lavish loving that you're looking for is not going to be enough. Through her, we enjoy what it means to be free, to explore yourself and the range of experiences that you might have. Also see how memory is colored with age, and as we grow more empathetic and wiser, see the peace that comes with self-forgiveness. Let's not forget how Chiamaka experiences her limitations due to the color of her skin. Like, it's the reason why she rejects the offer to write a book with an editorial slant that honors an identity she doesn't want to promote, In her travels, she's well aware of her skin color because, she's looked at as, sort of an object, sort of like some sort of fetish, sort of like some sort of talisman, and we see her strain against these limitations. End of it is so heartwarming that Chiamaka finds that thing within herself at the end of the story, and I think that is the true end of Dream Count. If you ask me, I think her story should have just been the Dream Count. She should have just sat down and just explored it. Zikora, I find her to be more like the representation of a kind of woman rather than a character herself. There are tons of people like Zikora in Nigerian literature, like you read about them every day, and like respect, the decision to not dive deeply into the character, even though I do not very much like it, because I think there are several nuances of this character that were missed because of how short it was. I kind of feel or suspect that maybe Chimamanda did not want to glorify this type of woman, but hey, that's just me, bringing out different things. This is not canon. This is not canon, guys. Who is Zikora? And I'll say this carefully. She exemplifies a modern woman who still values the ideals that women were forced to adopt in the past. Like, of course, there's choice feminism at all, but Zikora wants to have that traditional life, at all costs. And see her bristle when she meets Omelogo, who is diametrically her opposite. We see her put up the front of a strong woman who doesn't break in the face of great challenges. She carries everything with dignity, puts her health on the line to, achieve things, puts just, that extra mile that women are forced to go in society. Zikora doesn't do this without cause, though. She's ultimately reacting to her mother's situation. Her parents split and her father married a second wife, and her mother, who is now like, the senior wife, bears this with dignity, remaining stoic throughout the entire ordeal. Like, have a child not go through what she goes through. Zikora pushes to have, like, a life where there's a father, and a mother. See her doing extra things for the men in her life. Like, she wants to get married and have a kid and, let the kid have, like, a present father like she missed. All of this, like, comes to a head when what looks like the perfect place is ruined and she has to carry a pregnancy to term. And Dr. Kwame does something really bizarre. Although I think that it was a bitch move on his part because, although from his perspective, it looks like Zikora tried to trap him with a child. But then again, bruh, don't do that now. Don't do that now. Don't do that. Like, it's ultimately callous. What do you mean you cannot come through for a lover when they are in their, like, most desperate time of need? That personally hurts me. A baby is literally tearing Zikora apart, and you've gone silent and cold turkey on her. See, the men in this book can be like the worst people sometimes. Zikora judges herself too harshly for not meeting up with these ideals that have been foisted upon womanhood. She feels ashamed for needing her mother's help in spite of the mother-daughter friction that they have. However, when her mother now reveals a secret, Zikora now realizes that what she thought was never was, and then she starts to reflect, and that's kind of like the first step to her freeing her mind from the shackles of womanhood. Really, I don't like that Zikora's story is short. I think more could have been done. There was a lot of complexity to explore. There's a lot of parts that this thing could have gone down. Through Zikora, we explore the hoops that women have to navigate as they try to balance their own dreams with societal expectations. We look at what can befall a woman when she isn't bringing any of that, her intrinsic value that she's supposed to bring to a family, vis-a-vis Zikora's mother not having children and her husband having to go and marry a woman that can give him more children. Though her case is perhaps one of the more favorable ones because she's still senior wife, there are women who have been brutalized just for that thing and have been thrown out. So yeah, Zikora, flat, short, more could have been done, but ultimately I think the point that the book wanted to make about her situation was passed beautifully. And I mean, if it is meeting the premise, I cannot come and fight, I can only complain. Now, for Kadiatu's story, Chimamanda digs deep into the life of a woman rising from a mining village in Guinea to her life in the US. Now, Kadiatu's life has a lot of hiccups and sorrow, and at the height of it, she experiences something that no woman should be subjected to. She's first abused, and then they now take her story global, and then there's now this global vitriol being poured on her. That story is modeled after that of Nefissatou Diallo, and of course this even made me go back and read the story, and I just like read some of the news articles here, and I was like, it sort of like left a bad taste in my mouth, a really bad taste in my mouth. But then again, in Kadiatu's story, what I saw represented there, what I would say is that you can see how just as a woman, you can just be like moving around, just a regular day at the office. It can just land you in something that will change your life and the life of your children for years to come. No matter how far you get from where you are, abuse can still locate you as a woman. There are good parts in this novel in the sense that life doesn't end even after you have been globally ridiculed and you have been globally stressed. You can still dream. There's still potential for you to become something else. Sometimes it's okay to just let go, although I still think that she should not have let go. Anyway, the real story ended much more differently. Now, as for how Kadiatu is written in the shape of her character, I think that I will just finish this off in the latter part of this review where I have one or two axes to grind. Omelogo is a complex character, or she should be a complex character. I sense that there's a lot going under that veneer of stability. Now that is why she's very, very caustic at times. Kadiatu describes her as she will smile before telling you something bad, and then out of nowhere she can just tell you something nice with like a deadpan expression. If anything, we can say Omelogo has been like who she is for a long time. She hasn't really changed, but she has evolved. When I say not change, it means that she has refused to take roads that are not favorable to this identity that she has, no matter how tempting they are. And she should be satisfied with that, and while she is satisfied, pockets of unhappiness and loneliness that her ops have capitalized on, her aunt, despite seeing everything that Omelogo has achieved, still berates her for not getting married and not having children. Don't pretend to like the life that you are living. And that just brings to fore all of the unhappinesses and lonelinesses that Omelogo has refused to confront. What this writing does is that it holds Omelogo's life, sees how she has reacted to it, and it's sort of like a question like, okay, she's asking herself that, does she really like this life? That is the question that she poses. Now, we see that while Omelogo has not had a charmed life, she suffered like some trauma where her uncle Hezekiah died, dreams that she still has time to time. She has been able to surround herself with like the best of material things, good people, freedom to explore, joys of life, lovers. And even though all of these things, they never really feel the emptiness somewhere, because these things don't really feel emptinesses. They're only just coping mechanisms. All of the criticisms from Omelogo's parents often bounce off her thick skin, leaving marks that heal quickly, if they leave any mark. But underneath all of that iron, Omelogo now carries like deep trauma, and something that has led over time to a depression when she was a child. And because that trauma really broke something inside her. This trauma is from the death of her uncle Hezekiah. Like, it empties her of something that she keeps trying to feel, something she keeps trying to get back. Tries to feel this thing with work and nice things, and doing so much good and noble things like giving grants to business women and lifting women out of poverty. Something that I think that really, 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 really sets her apart here. At her core, there's still a part of her that is a little bit miserable. She once told a man, that's the one that got away, Chijoke, that she's tainted. And that really, really hit me, because like after all of this, you still internalize these things like, excuse me, girl, stand up. But then again, you now start to see that is sort of colors everything that she does. She goes to the US like to expand her horizons, to sort of like find a new dream in that society that she has always adored. She goes to realize that she has been looking at it through like a lot of rose colors. And then when she comes back to her community, she just decides to like just take everything one day at a time. So Chimamanda sort of leaves us at the end to decide if Omelogo has a full life or not. Here's what I think. I don't think she really enjoys her life. I think that she still feels that emptiness heavy deep inside her, and she has tried to like, fill it up with a lot of things. You can see how aggressive she is when she's attacking people. That is a signal of some things that are like deeply unresolved. There's a sort of mismatch in the things that she feels. She's not able to like hold commitment for long. I think that when she's finally able to confront the trauma of Hezekiah's death, full deconstruction of that, I think that's when she'll be able to see more of the colors in her life, because her life is very, very colorful, and the only reason why she'll not be satisfied with it is because she hasn't dealt with like this trauma. Ending just leaves her really surrendering and being a little defeatist, and I find that to be a little bit weak on her part, because I'm like, go to therapy, unpack what happened with Uncle Hezekiah. 10 sessions, 20 sessions, you can afford it. End up with that girl in your friend group that you guys have some sort of relationship with. Life is short. Enjoy these passions. Sustain it. That's what I would say. Because if I were her with a house of my own in Abuja, with regular dinner parties with my friends, I'm not even cooking the food. I have house chef that is cooking the food. I have like a proper understanding of my moods. I can switch off and switch on. I can afford therapy. No, please. I guess that brings us to the end of the primary characters. Now there are a lot of secondary characters that just give us like this very colorful backdrop and sort of like highlights what our primary characters are deal with. Some of them are like foils. Some of them are just like paths not traveled. Even though like a lot of them are not fleshed out enough, one of the things is that there's definitely like a central core, a central philosophy, a central kind of thing that Chimamanda just wanted to highlight, and she brings these people to do it. And you know what, to be honest, fair. Now onto the discourse. This is where I talk about my gripes, I talk about like my opinions. So generally, Dream Count was a decent novel. It works very well within like this premise that I have given it. And when it comes to like demonstrating the internal and external struggles of women as they try to dream, A plus. When he tries to run a commentary on society, it's shaky. It comes off as bitter, you know. There are so many times where we get jarred out of the story because so that our characters do like a running commentary on society. Like there were so many times that Omelogo was doing that, and I was like, oh my god, there are so many discussions they had over those tables. I was like, it could be better. It felt like there was like this resistance to keep it cohesive with the rest of the writing, because you now have like this beautiful prose, these wonderful internal dialogues that are just like layering and layering, and all of a sudden you are just jolted out of like this flow with what is a tongue lashing of American society, or just modern society, or just things. It's so jarring that at some point I'm like, am I reading the same book, or did we just switch into like some sort of Facebook post? Or if this was like a new writer of the blog who was not able to like stitch this into the fabric of the story, then okay, I can chalk it up to beginner's nerves. But it's Chimamanda. To be honest, mixing the stories of 4 women who have tenuous connections to each other is kind of hard. Like, writers often wait for like a long time to find like a proper like connection to stitch these stories. Like, I talk about the creation of Half-Broken People and how Sifiwe said that she waited for years before she was able to like stitch the stories of those 3 women inside that book. You also find Leila Abulela saying that she had that story, but she waited for like a particular character to develop so that she was able to like stitch these stories. I don't think Chimamanda really waited for this story to develop all to the point where she could stitch all of these things that felt very rough into the fabric of the story. I don't think she waited. That's why I would say Dreamcount felt rushed. Yes, it achieves what it wants to achieve, but when I go down into like how it flows, it feels rushed. And I don't think it is wrong to expect better from Chimamanda. And because to really be able to like see Dreamcount for what it was, I had to approach it as a debut novel to sink deeply. My biggest problem with the novel is, why Kadiatu's story? You can take out like 100+ pages of Kadiatu's story and you will still have a powerful novel. In fact, I think Dreamcount is more cohesive as a novel if we push Kadiatu's story aside. Shining a light on Nafissatou Diallo's story, not really a great move. So when the author's notes starts to read, I just get the sense that she's trying to justify why she shone a bright light on that story. So at the end of all of this, Dreamcount, still a very, very fun read. I urge you to still read it and just look past whatever faults that you have with it. At times, it might come off as hard to chew, but then again, you guys should really be reading chewy literature. Literary fiction doesn't really care about whether you enjoy plot or anything. Literary fiction is here to pass across a message and usually hold up like a mirror to reality, and it usually breaks a lot of molds to be able to create the effects and heighten the things that it wants to heighten. So even if this book feels difficult to read, power through and discuss Dreamcount with somebody else. If there are parts of this review that you don't agree with or things that you feel like did not see, please hit me up and let's talk, because I would really like to also know if there are things I missed inside here. This has been the book replay for today, and I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you learned something new. I hope you want to read Dreamcount again and discuss it with somebody else. And I hope that you like this video. Please like it. I hope that you're also going to subscribe. Please subscribe. I hope you're also going to share it. By all means, share it. Yeah, let's not get fatigued. Let's keep talking about these books as much as we can, because we do have stories that we want to tell, and it's these stories that will heal us. Bye bye. See you at the next book.